Welcome back to the Green Yard. It is an absolutely beautiful, slightly windy end of March day here in Phoenix, Arizona. Really starting to get that springtime day feel here in Phoenix. During the spring, usually we do have windy afternoons with beautiful, warmer mornings. Today it's actually going to be in the mid 80s for a high, upper 50s for a low. The absolute perfect temperature, especially for our fruiting and flowering tropical trees. Speaking of those tropical trees, we're over here in the food forest part of the Green Yard. We kind of had this extensive food forest garden that we've started growing here in the Green Yard itself, including a koi fish pond with some more tropicals that's kind of positioned behind the camera. This is kind of the introduction part to the food forest part of the Green Yard, where you walk in, and this is our bed on the right, and then we also have a small planting space on the left. Seeing a lot of new growth, lots of fruit, lots of abundance starting to come out this spring, which is part of the reason why we're here today. While we're not doing a harvesting video, we are talking about some of that new growth and that abundance that we're seeing with one of our trees in particular. Over here in the food forest part of the Green Yard, we've been planting. We have some older plants and we also have some newer plants. This bed itself is on the fairly newer side. Before this last fall, we went in and we put in this new starfruit tree that's actually doing really well, putting off a whole bunch of new growth, made it through the winter with flying colors. Same with our custard apple as well. Flying colors, starting to put out some new growth. We planted some kind of our shrubs for our herbaceous layer. Unfortunately, most of those did not make it through our intense heat last summer. So we'll see when we try those again. Originally, we had this longin here. This longin, very, very slow growing over here in this part of the Green Yard, but it is putting on some beautiful new growth. So I'm hoping this year we start to see kind of this explosion of growth and it start to take off a little bit. We also had our Suriname cherry tree as well, and we planted our foxtail palm tree that's over there about 1 year ago as well, which we're gonna do a little how's it growing video with that foxtail palm tree coming up here pretty quick. The reason why we're over here though is for the tree that I didn't mention, which is this papaya tree here. So it's actually been almost exactly 2 years since I put out my planting a papaya here in Phoenix, Arizona. We have a total of 3 papayas here in the Green Yard, 2 over in the food forest part of the Green Yard, and then 1 over on kind of our side yard where we have a couple mango trees. We have our black sapote and our chico sapote over there as well, our sapodilla tree. So we're actually in this video going to visit all 3 trees because each tree has kind of grown up in a little bit different, slightly different microclimate. And we're going to look at which one is the best out of those microclimates because they each have their benefits and their drawbacks for each of those 3 planting spots. So let's kind of go through and let's look at each of those 3 planting spots and how our papaya trees are doing in those 3 planting spots. Here we go. All right, so if you can believe it, this big, tall, about 8 foot tall papaya tree is actually the 1.5 to 2 foot tall plant that I put in the ground almost exactly 2 years ago. So we were over here in this food forest part of the Green Yard. We have our koi fish pond that had just been put in. We had our jabuticaba at the time, but it has definitely grown a lot more. We also had our Cary mango tree, but that was kind of it over here. We were really experimenting with this space and starting to put in some of our additional fruiting and flowering tropical trees like our loquat and our Michaelia alba back there. So this is what it looks like after 2 years. Now this one, and part of the reason I want to go to all 3 of our papaya trees is because this one I thought would be in the absolute perfect spot, the absolute best tree, that it would do the best and really put on a whole lot of fruit, a whole lot of growth. And I was kind of wrong. This one actually doesn't get enough sun, shockingly. So this gets sun until about 10 o'clock in the morning, which for our papaya trees, they do want that morning sun, afternoon shade. So that 10 o'clock is generally the rule with our papaya trees here in the Phoenix area. But this one actually doesn't get enough sun. The fruit gets to about this size and then it just drops off. It's almost like there's not enough energy. It doesn't collect enough energy from the sun to put into these papaya fruit. It does still flower. There's actually a flower on here right now. It is still producing fruit. It's just not doing anything with that fruit. And we're gonna look at some of our other spots and how it's been doing with its fruit. As far as the tree itself goes, doing really great, okay? The reason why it looks like a stick, no protection during the winter. So that first year that it grew so much. All three of them, they grew so much that there was absolutely no way that I could protect them from our winter cold. So they have never received any cold protection, these three papayas. They get some afternoon shade, and all three of them do get afternoon shade, just at varying times in the afternoon. This one, like I said, starting about 10 a.m. A little too early for these papaya trees. They need a little bit more sun, in my experience here in the green yard with our soil and our microclimate that we have. So this tree is still doing great. Really, really pretty tree. I love papayas. I love the fact that they're hollow. If you knock against it, you can actually hear the inside of the papaya is hollow. And when I had one papaya before and it didn't make it through the winter. All of these three have made it through the winter, but my one before didn't make it through the winter. And when I pulled it out, the whole inside it's empty, which is just crazy to me. We're gonna kind of see how this guy does this year. You can see it's quickly approaching this branch in our giant male mulberry tree that kind of provides this protection. So we're gonna see if it ends up growing more or what ends up happening with it or branching out, which we're gonna talk about with one of our other papayas. So I have no plans of taking it out. I'm gonna kind of just let it continue to grow, fill in this space, shade some of our other tropicals that need that afternoon shade, and we'll kind of see if we ever get fruit off this guy or not. If not, at least it's a beautiful, beautiful tree in a very, very nice spot. Let's go ahead, let's move to one of our, actually probably the best tree that we have here, which is the one we started with. So we're gonna move over to kind of the beginning of the food forest, and let's talk about that other papaya tree. Here we go. All right, here's that longin that we have here. I did a planting video on this when we first put it in. It's growing really slow. Every time it seems to put out these new leaves, the leaf cutter bees come and they just end up decimating the tree. So not really putting on a whole lot of new growth, but I'm still gonna hang on and maybe we'll get there. So when I say that this papaya tree is by far doing the best out of all of our papaya trees, it really has to do with location. So this tree doesn't get that morning sun. It gets a little bit of morning sun, but it gets kind of this midday sun. So it gets sun from about, I would say 10 to about 2 o'clock, 1:30, 2 o'clock or so. And you can see on here, not only this trunk is thick, this is a big, big trunk that we have here. I can't even fit my hand around it. This is only 2 years. You can see it's starting to maybe put off some lateral sprouts here, and we're gonna look at our other tree because it is definitely doing that. Big, big, big sturdy trunk that we have here going up into what we have, which is this beautiful fruit. So this fruit has been on the tree. It started last fall and it's held on through the fall into the winter. You can see a little bit of like cold damage that's on here, just a little bit of discoloration, but overall doing really well. Lots and lots and lots of new flowers, lots and lots of papayas coming out. It's amazing to see how well this tree is doing. And besides all those flowers, we also have all this brand new growth up at the top. It just keeps putting on and putting on and putting on that new growth. So I would say that this is the absolute best out of all of our papaya trees. It is doing the best, putting on that new growth the fastest, and honestly, it is just loaded in papayas. I can't wait for them to ripen here soon. And one thing that's different about this tree So we have our individual papayas that are hanging on, but this one's actually producing multiple papayas on one stem, which is really, really cool to see. So it's amazing how well our papayas can do here in the Phoenix area. We don't think of, papayas, this tropical fruit, is doing well here, but they do well without any cold protection. It's got no cold protection throughout the winter. And honestly, with a little bit more sun in the summer as well. And we're going to go kind of to our next tree now as well. But it's just amazing to see how well this tree is doing. So I'm hoping for some really wonderful papaya harvesting videos and some great abundance from this tree and our other tree that we're about to go to. All right, so this is the other part of the green yard where we have that papaya tree here. This is our side yard, more of a typical side yard. We have our food forest over there that's really that wide extended side yard. And then we have here, which is, it's only about maybe 5-6 feet across from the wall to the actual house here. And this is where we have a few of our other mango trees, our fruit punch mango and our Spirit of 76. Done a bunch of videos on our fruit punch mango lately. We also have our sapotes over here, some more of those, more tropical trees. So we have our Chico sapote, our sapodilla right here, and we also have our black sapote back towards the fence, which I've done a lot of videos on and a couple shorts on as well. And then we have our papaya tree here, kind of in between, sandwiched in between this fruit punch mango and this sapodilla here. And as you can see, you would think that this is close enough to the house like we talked about with our other mango tree, but it's actually not. Part of the reason why is because on the other side of this fence, there's nothing. There's nothing here. It's actually probably another 20-25 feet until you get to the house. So there's nothing here except for this mulberry tree that is our neighbor's mulberry tree. So this is way more wide open than in the food forest where we have our other papayas. So this papaya tree got hit really, really hard this last winter. You can actually see it stopped growing leaves on the top, and now it's starting to put out kind of these side growths here, which will eventually be future trunks, and it will end up being kind of this multi-trunk papaya. But this papaya has done really, really well. Up until the winter, this papaya was our best papaya that we had, doing really, really well, putting off some really, really big fruit. It actually looks like we're gonna have a harvesting video of our papayas pretty quick because this big guy on the bottom is actually starting to yellow a little bit. So hopefully we get to have that harvesting video kind of following up our growing video of our papayas. So this microclimate, it gets sun. The sun kind of goes behind the roof of the house around 2:30 in the afternoon for our papaya. So it does get that late afternoon sun, right? Anything after about 3 o'clock we found with our papayas here in the green yard, they need that shade after about 3 o'clock in the summer, but they do want more of that sun in kind of that midday. And then this one, obviously, with all of our papayas, they're too big to cold protect. Obviously, this one needed a little bit of cold protection this last winter just because it did get hit pretty hard. So our papaya trees, they do really, really well here in the Phoenix area. I would highly recommend, if you want to be successful and start out with some tropical fruit trees, definitely pick a papaya tree, put it in the ground. As you can see behind me, we just have loads and loads of papayas on this tree over here in the introduction of the food forest part of the green yard. It really is amazing to see these trees after 2 years in the ground be that full and that productive. This one here ultimately is the best spot that we've kind of uncovered with our papayas. So the best spot isn't necessarily over in the food forest where we get, that shade right away after 10 o'clock. I know this is in the food forest too, but this gets that midday sun, right? From maybe about noon, 11 o'clock, maybe even 10 o'clock, depending on on the time of year until about 2 in the afternoon, 1:30, 2 o'clock in the afternoon. And that afternoon sun, that extra little bit of sun, as you can see, has just really taken off with this tree. And so really what I would recommend are papayas from here in the green yard. From what it seems like our papayas want a little bit more sun, a little bit more of that afternoon sun. They also want no cold protection. They don't need any cold protection because they'll come back. They'll put out those kind of lateral sprouts right off the tree. So no real worries if the top does stop producing those leaves. But planting it somewhere close to the house is probably the best idea. Just like this one here is really close to the house in this microclimate between our sheds underneath these giant male mulberry trees and right next to the house itself. And we're seeing the best success and the best growth and probably the healthiest as well with this papaya tree versus some of the other ones. The one in the food forest by the koi fish pond doesn't get enough sun, and then the one over kind of in the side yard that we have that's a little bit more you know, secluded, right? It's not as protected, it doesn't have as good of a microclimate. We see that the frost does get to it. It's still growing, it's still producing. That's probably the first one that's going to produce a papaya for us, but it's definitely struggling a little bit more than this guy here. If you have any additional questions about our papayas, please feel free to comment below. And you know, I love talking about our fruiting and flowering tropical trees here in the green yard. So if you saw any of our trees and you want to learn more, definitely mention it in the comments and I'll try to put a video or a short out about it. And of course, last but not least, as always, live green, plant lots, and have fun. We'll see you guys next time.